بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Before I answer the questions, it's such a dangerous responsibility and heavy responsibility to answer questions. Why? And this is the job of the ulama, and I do not claim ever whatsoever to be even close to be one of them whatsoever. And this is one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ said in the authentic hadith, one of the signs of the Day of Judgment, that he said, إِذَا ضُيَّعَتِ الْأَمَانَةِ فَانْتَظِرِ السَّاعَةِ. If the amana is being lost, trust is being lost, then wait for the hour. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ, what is the amana? He said, أَنْ يُوَسَّدَ الْأَمْرُ لِغَيْرِ أَهْلِ. When the matter is given to those who do not fit the position. A position is given to someone does not fit him. A alim is someone that fits a certain criteria. And when someone sits in the position of a alim and he talks as if he is a alim when he's not, this is one of the signs of the hour. So to make it clear that I'm not here responding to these questions as if I'm a mufti or a alim or anything like that. If I know or I heard this from the ulama regarding the answers these questions, I will answer. If I don't, then I would say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from falling into the holes of the hellfire as a result of speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowledge. Some questions, of course, are lectures by itself. So, hopefully I'm not going to get into details because of the time. How do you balance living the 9-to-5 job schedule and fulfilling your rights to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's a good question, and we need to know it, since the religion of Islam is something that is all our whole entire life. First, of course, we have obligations that we have to fulfill, and we have to put things in perspective. The first pillar of Islam, we have to believe in it and apply it in our life. Second pillar of Islam is as-salah, right? And I'm here, I left all the introduction, I'm going directly to something specific, physical, that we do. The salah, which is the second pillar of Islam, is the most important physical job that we do in the day and the night. And anything else comes after the salah, right? And when they talk about time management since 9 to 5 and how to organize our time, we put the most important things first and then we fill in the blanks, right? And this is what they always teach, right? And the stones and the sand and everything goes into place. So what's the major physical action for us in the day and the night? Is to establish the salah, to perfect it. To perfect it meaning, if a person is capable, that he prays in the jama'ah in the masjid, that he makes the sunnah, that he makes the wudu, and all the obligations and the recommended acts, he makes the salah fully, and then he can go and work and do whatever he wants. So if these prescribed times in the salah are being respected in our life, and we give so much concern to it, then things will get into place in between these salawat. So from 9 to 5, there is nothing wrong with a person working from 9 to 5, as long as he's fulfilling all the rights in his life, one of which the rights to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by learning the proper belief and by fulfilling the salawat, paying the zakah, doing what is halal, being away from what is haram. This job from 9 to 5, what is he doing in it? Right? Is it a halal job or it's a haram job? And if it's halal or haram, we only get to know that from the revelation of the people of knowledge. And if it's halal, are we fulfilling the rights that people entrusted us with this halal job? Because it's not just that it's halal and that's it. There's a contract, there's a covenant that we're supposed to honor. Are we doing the best we can? And when the order of Allah comes, then there's no obedience to anyone. Are we missing the salah during the work? Then this work becomes not for the sake of Allah, becomes for our sake. But our job, when we do our jobs, is for the sake of Allah, to protect ourselves, not to beg from anyone, to give charity, to protect our families, to serve the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then when the salah comes and the person is not making the salah, he's not doing that then for the sake of Allah. So taking the time out to perform the salah, the heart is constantly in the remembrance of Allah, so that we are not in the state of forgetfulness, we're not committing haram. We go back, we fulfill the rights of our families, we go to the masajid. If every community, every day, Maghrib or Isha, and if for those who are far away from the masjid, they come to the house of Allah, and they have a halaqah in the masjid, even if it's 10 minutes, has a big effect in our life. But for us to be busy because we work from 9 to 5 and we come back tired, and we don't see the masjid except maybe on Jumu'ah or weekend or whatever there is, this is something that would affect our iman definitely, brings our iman down. We are in an environment that if you choose to be here, that means we have to fulfill the deen of Allah in the most perfect way. If you are in a Muslim land somewhere, the adhan comes, you go pray when you're at work or whatever, it makes it easy. But here, we have to do the effort in which we are in the house of Allah every day. This is where our nutrition is from. We have to get this nutrition from the house of Allah. We come with a submitting heart. We hear the verses of Allah, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. We take it with us to the work and to our whole life and apply it according to what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, this is needs more details, and this is the topic actually that can be for a lecture. How to spend the time in our day and night, or what was the day schedule, if it's correct to say that, or the day jobs of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. The questions of please explain if intermingling of unrelated men and women allowed or not, and women looking at non-mahram men or men looking at women, and the famous common issue in the masajid about the separation of men and women, and the same thing here, another question with regarding to having the women in a separate place and things like that. This is another lecture, right? And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy to answer it in very few minutes. Again, this is religion. And religion meaning wahy. Submit ourselves to the wahy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not one verse versus actions or one hadith. It's the whole revelation from Allah. And this is why we need the ilm. We need the knowledge. We need the people of knowledge. And the issue of intermingling or the relationship between men and women in Islam, it's something that has been clear in the deen of Allah. And this is one of the tests that we go through, because people might not like what you're doing, because this is not their norm. But this is our deen of Allah that we have to respect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned verses in the Quran that regulates this relationship. And to see the wisdom behind it, although we're supposed to submit ourselves no matter what, there is so much care to the family unit in Islam. Because to protect the family, this would protect the whole community, would protect the whole society, for the word of Allah to be superior. That's why shaitan, as it's mentioned in the hadith in Sahih Muslim, that he rejoiced so much when one of his shaitan helpers, they come at the end of the day, and he said, I kept with him till I separated him from his wife. This hadith, it says that a shaitan would come to the Iblis on the ocean, or on the sea somewhere, and he put his throne there, and he would tell him, I kept with him till I made him commit zina. He would say he did not do anything. Another shaitan would come and he said that I kept with him till I made him steal. He said he didn't do anything, meaning it's not that great. And then someone would come and tell him, I kept with him till I separated from his wife, which, as we know, divorce is not haram necessarily. And then the shaitan would say, you are the one. And he would embrace him. Why? Because he is raising the helpers of shaitan. Why? Because if a person commits zina or steals or whatever, if he repents to Allah, this is a sin of course and a disaster, but if he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sincere repentance, all this effort of the shaitan throughout his whole life is finished, right? All of his effort is lost. All the investments that he has been making in this individual, he loses it all by the repentance, the simple repentance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how much he invests, the shaitan doesn't go to sleep. He does not take a rest. He is constantly working and investing to make the whole humanity go to the hellfire. So when somebody repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, imagine what you do to the shaitan when you do that. And this is the mercy of Allah. But when our husband and a wife are separated, what happens? Children are raised in a dysfunctioning way of life. That means they can be the soldiers of shaitan. They won't repent. These are the type of people that he wants. So that they don't have this conscious that they want to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, they are the ones that he wants them to stay in deviation till the moment of death, so that they die in the state of kufr wal-'iyadhu billah. Although the original action was a halal thing. So as a result of that importance, and you find verses in the Quran talks about divorce and marriage and rulings between the men and women and lowering the gaze and all of that. And some people don't understand and they think this is just to make our life more strict. No, it's to protect the deen that we're talking about. So as a result of that, as one of the ulama of the Ottoman Empire, he was sitting with the people, some of the politicians in Europe at their time, and the politicians of sitting with him, and they told him, how come your women are not sitting with us like we do? He told them a very precise answer. He said, because we don't want them to have children from other than their husbands. And this is what happens in societies when they make the matter loose, right? And that means dysfunctional families. That means children out of wedlock that they don't know anything. And we know, we don't need to explain and bring statistics and things of that nature, right? And for people, those who would see what's happening, for example, in the prisons and how people, the mentality is so different. And because of the dysfunctional families and things like that, as if they are totally different state of mind. But again, this is another subject, right? So this is a goal in the religion of Islam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise. So anything that would lead to this destruction, you would find it not permissible. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in such a way that men, they have this tendency towards the women, and the same thing for the women. So the women in our life that we need to intermingle with are the wife, are the mother, are the sister, all these blood related that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. We know that these are our maharim. What is for a Muslim man has any business to do with another woman other than this maharim? There is no need. We would find that we can do our life perfectly without having to have these forms of relationships, because if we do, then we're going against our orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that would lead people. A person sees something he likes, Iman is weak, he wants to take the means to fulfill whatever he wants. Isn't that the nature of the human being? And whoever says otherwise, he's lying against his own self. Even if he had the best upbringing and the best values and everything, Iman is weak. This is in the nature of the human being, right? And this is, anyway, it's the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the loose intermingling between men and women without observing the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not permissible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered in the Quran for the men to lower their gaze. Clear verses in the Quran. And ordering the believing women to lower their gaze, right? And since this is the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you put them together, are they going to lower their gaze or not? Right? If they lower their gaze and the matter is for a need, people walk in the streets, for example, they lower their gaze. But for a person to be in charge of a place, we need to protect ourselves from the evil within our own selves. So at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, which is one of the questions in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, was there a curtain? This is the famous question always. Was there a curtain or separate room for the women at the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ? The answer is no. There was not a curtain in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. Where women used to pray, they used to pray in the back. And the men used to pray in the front. Shaitan, from the human being, shayateen, or the other shayateen, they would say, women are second class. Why they're behind? Why can't they be in the front? This is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Somebody has to be in the front rows and somebody has to be in the back rows. And this is the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's a great wisdom for it, and we know the wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyway, so this is the honorable position for the women because this is the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the Prophet ﷺ said that the best of the lines of men are the front lines. And the worst of the lines, meaning the least preferred, not something that is evil or anything. Person coming to the masjid, it's a great deed. But the least preferred is the last lines. And the worst and the best of the lines for the women are the last lines. And the least preferred or the worst lines are the front lines for the women. Why is that? Because the front line is the closest to the men. And the last line for the women is the furthest. So that means what? In the most pure place, which is the house of Allah, the more that she is away from the men, the more that she is fulfilling the orders of Allah. But they still was in the same place. And of course, people would say this argument that we need to have the women in the same place. Sure. But aren't we supposed to apply the whole sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? The answer is yes. So how the Prophet ﷺ used to have the women in the masjid? They come to the salah and the Prophet ﷺ said, "La tamna'u ima Allah masajid Allah." Do not prevent the women, those who are servants of Allah, from the houses of Allah. Do not prevent them. They want to go to the masjid, don't let them, or don't say no. They come to the masjid. The Prophet ﷺ used to have a separate door for the women. And Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he would not enter from that door. even when the masjid is empty. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, leave this door for the women. So he would not even enter from it when the masjid is empty, out of his strict following the orders of the Prophet ﷺ. So he had a door for them. When they enter the masjid, they start from the back to the front, right? And there's separation here. And that's an evidence that separation, if it's in the masjid, it's supposed to be separation in the homes and everywhere when it comes to the strange men and the strange women together. And hadith in Al-Bukhari, that the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would finish the salah, he would wait for a little bit facing the Qibla. And Anas radiallahu anhu, he said, we used to say that he would do that till the women leaves. So once he makes salam alayhi salatu wassalam, what happened to the women at the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ? They all leave. They don't sit, make dhikr. They don't sit and the Prophet ﷺ turn and speaks and give a lecture and they're sitting in the back. They would come to the salah, yes, with the Prophet ﷺ in the back, but once he make the salah, this is the hadith, they would leave immediately. Why? And that's the Prophet ﷺ, the most pure human being. And he would stay there so that he would, when he turns, his eyes won't fall onto the women in the back, because Allah ordered us to lower our gaze out of the respect towards one another, out of the respect to the wife, that the person's supposed to look at her alone. Some women, they wish that their husbands apply the orders of Al-Islam. If you ask a woman, any woman, married, Muslim or non-Muslim, and you tell her, would you like your husband not to look whatsoever at even the face of any other woman but you and his mother and sister, of course, but we're talking about, with that regard, would a woman say no? Any woman that is sincere and she loves her husband would say, mashallah, this is nothing better than this. How faithful and sincere he is to her, and the same thing for the women, right? So even the Prophet ﷺ teaching his ummah that he doesn't want to turn till they leave, so that doesn't happen. So if we can apply this in our masajid, plus the women at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, would we ever imagine that a woman at the time of the Prophet ﷺ would come, and also the men, would come to the house of Allah with her hair showing, for example, or wearing a skirt that is short, or putting perfume on? The Prophet ﷺ said to the women, if you have bukhur, incense in your home, do not come to the Isha prayer, because it makes a smell to her garment, and when she comes, that can be of a way of attraction to the men. So to that extent, the Prophet ﷺ is protecting us from our own selves, so that we protect our family, so that we protect the orders of Allah. This is the mercy of Allah, not a difficult way of life. This is the mercy of Allah to live a goodly life according to the orders of Allah. So would we imagine that a woman would come in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ with a short skirt, for example, or her arm showing, or her hair showing? Of course not, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ would never let that happen, because he's the Prophet of Allah. So that means they used to come to the masjid, and as it's mentioned in the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, as Aisha radiallahu anha said when the verse of hijab was revealed, the women, they came and they were covered with the black clothing that they had, no fitna whatsoever between the men and the women. So observing the full dress code that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the sisters, the women to do, and the men too. The men also, they have to observe the proper clothing when they come to the house of Allah, and they would leave immediately after the salah when the person makes the salam. If we apply this, mashallah, that's great. But now, let's do it in a practical manner. Will we make a policewoman by the door, a woman coming, her hair showing, you go home please, jazakumullah khairan, and then she checks? We cannot do that. And we know for a fact that to many of us, we're away somehow from the perfecting the orders of Allah. This is a reality. Whether we have the good intentions or not, we need to teach ourselves definitely. But this is a fact. So what we do in that case? Would we make a police at the door of the masajid to prevent the women that are not wearing the proper hijab from entering, for example, the masajid? It's not practical. And what's going to happen is, then we would find sins being committed in the house of Allah by women, for example, entering without the hijab. And then the men are entering and looking, for example, at the sisters, and the sisters looking at the men. And then they would stand in the back of the masjid talking, as they do outside the masjid, in the malls or whatever there is. And then it becomes, after the salah they sit and they all get together, and this is all steps of shaitan. So, and again, the Prophet ﷺ, when it comes to this setting, the Prophet ﷺ, there's a clear evidence. Authentic hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and or the women said to the Prophet ﷺ, the men always, they have you talking to them and we need a share of this. So the Prophet ﷺ used to go to them on Tuesdays. Go to them, to the women on Tuesdays, and he would teach them. This is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So there was no such a thing in which there is lectures and they're all sitting together and the Prophet ﷺ, sitting like this. Some incidences, some people would say, for example, in Hajj, there are certain gatherings where they are together. And some women would ask a question and things like that. But the norm in the masajid, in the houses of Allah, this was the case. So if we can apply this, and this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, nobody would ever say that this is wrong. I don't want to take too long, but I hope the matter is clear. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring harmony in the houses of Allah. And anyway, when these things brings always problems in the masajid, it's definitely to avoid these problems by having like the matter like this. It's better definitely. And also for those who are building masajid, designing a masajid, they need to make it comfortable for the sisters too, right? When they're totally isolated, they have no idea what's happening. It's still an issue, right? But when they, in the back and there is something separates in which they can hear, and things like that nature, it makes it easier, inshallah ta'ala. With regarding to, and there's no shyness in the religion of Islam, can girl find a groom for herself? We know that Islam teaches us to have shyness, definitely, both men and women. And the Prophet ﷺ said that shyness or modesty is the religion of Islam. Why? Because it prevents the person from falling into sins, this characteristics of shyness, if he has it or if she has it, when the iman even is weak. But those who are having the opposite of shyness, it brings some bad qualities. So for both men and women, they're supposed to be shy. But in the nature of the human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the woman, or she's supposed to be someone that is sought. The men, they seeks women. And women in their original form, they are being sought, right? The men, they seeks them. And of course, she has to accept that she would accept for so and so to be her husband. But this is the norm. But in some cases, there is no harm. If the woman, and she has the right to be married, and she wants to be married to a righteous man that would protect her religion, there's nothing wrong with her as long as the orders of Allah are being applied. There's no sins involved. And if she seeks a husband in that way, there's no harm as long as there's no haram being involved. And it's also the guardian of the woman, her father or so, he can do that. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he would, when he went to Umar and then the Prophet ﷺ to marry Aisha, he's the one that is looking for the righteous person. And this is one of the sunan that we had neglected because people would misunderstand it. Somebody now has a daughter and he sees a righteous man that he knows him very well. And he wants a righteous person for his daughter. And he approaches this man and he tells him, I have a daughter, why don't you consider marrying her? Of course, he's not going to force him, right? And if he doesn't like her, for example, he should not get upset that he didn't like her. This is the normal thing. But he would be so much embarrassed to say that because he might seem like his daughter is no good and he's just trying to get her married, right? This is cultural thing. But this is part of our deen. Because the goal of the father or the mother or so is to make sure that their daughters also are married to righteous individuals and things of that nature. So as long as it's done within the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the boundaries of the deen, there is nothing wrong with that, inshallah ta'ala, without any harm. As a non-Muslim sneezes, can you say, bless you? When a non-Muslim sneezes, you tell him, may Allah guide you. And we all need guidance, right? It's not an insult. Isn't that true? And it says that in the Sunnah. I mean, for a Muslim, when he sneezes, you say, Arhamukallah, right? And you can say it in Arabic so that you avoid any, Arhamukallah, when he sneezes, but he has to say Alhamdulillah, right? If a Muslim sneezes and he does not say Alhamdulillah, don't say anything. Because the Prophet ﷺ made it clear. He has to say Alhamdulillah, you have to hear it, right? If you hear it, then it's his right for you to say Arhamukallah. If he doesn't say it, we don't say anything. As it's mentioned in the hadith that the Jews used to be in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ and they would make themselves sneeze and they say Alhamdulillah so that the Prophet ﷺ would tell them Yarhamukumullah. But instead the Prophet ﷺ would tell them Yahdikumullah wa yuslihu balakum, which is the other response when a person says Yarhamukallah, the one that sneezes would say Yahdikumullah wa yuslihu balakum. So you just skip that level and you go to the next one. in which he would say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide you. And you explain to them that we all need guidance. Everybody needs guidance anyway. The question is, what about democracy in the Holy Land or Palestine? And when I try to get some more explanation of the question, what it means about tolerance to other faiths. And unfortunately, with all the distortions that are happening, people do not know the real history of Islam. They get the history of Islam distorted, and it's meant to be that way. But the history of the deen of Islam, when the Muslims ruled the land, people enjoyed the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a fact. And whether it's Jerusalem or any place, there is nothing whatsoever in the religion of Islam that would make a Muslim force another to change his religion. It is haram, it is forbidden. La ikraha fi ddin. No compulsion in the religion. If a person chooses disbelief, this is his decision. It is not permissible for us to force anyone to embrace Islam. It is our duty to call them to the religion of Islam, yes. You know why? Because it's the rights of the human beings to know about Islam. It is their right. You know human rights, when I talk about human rights? What human rights according to the United Nations? Can somebody explain to me? Because I'm really maybe not aware. What's the human rights? When they say human rights, what do they mean by human rights? His rights to live and eat and not to be tortured, right? And his rights of beliefs and everything like that, right? In our religion of Islam, the human rights is far more than just what the United Nations define, because this we get it from the creator of the heavens and the earth. The rights of the human being to eat and drink and to have a shelter, it is the duty of the Muslims to do that to those who are under their control, is to provide for them, to defend them at times of war. It's a religious duty to defend them and to take care of them and to have justice to them and all of these things. And it is their rights to know about Islam. Because some people think that when we do da'wah, this is not good. No, it's their right to know about Islam. When they know about Islam and Islam is explained to them, they have the choice whether to accept Islam or not. The Prophet ﷺ, when some of the Christians came to the Prophet ﷺ from Najran, and the Prophet ﷺ presented Islam to them. Of course, many came and many embraced Islam, but this one group, they did not embrace the religion of Islam. They are in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. They are in Medina, under the control of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum. If the Prophet ﷺ ordered for them to be finished, nobody would tell the Prophet ﷺ anything. The Prophet ﷺ gave them a safe passage. Nobody harmed them when they refused to embrace the religion of Islam. When the Muslims, when Umar ibn al-Khattab at his time, when Jerusalem was liberated by the Muslims, he, radiallahu anhu, the Khalifa, went to take the keys from Jerusalem from those, the Christian leaders who were present there. And there was a church, or the famous church there, and time for the Salah come, and he wanted to pray in there. But he refused for a reason. So that he said, so that people won't come after me, Muslims. And they would say that Umar prayed in this church, we need this is our church. Because Umar radiallahu anhu prayed in it. So that they don't claim it. See how he was thinking so much ahead, in which it's permissible for a Muslim to make his salah, if it's in a church, salah come time, and he wants to make salah, as long as there's no idols, and there's no pictures. If it happened and he wants to make the salah, it's permissible, right? But again, we have to deal with the wala al-bara, which is a different story. But even that, he did not make the salah in there, radiallahu anh, to protect that place so that nobody would come and say that he prayed there. The other thing is, throughout the history of Islam, they were never been, when the Muslims ruled in a proper way, nobody was ever compelled to change the religion. Actually, the Church of Nazareth, I believe, till now, the keys for the church is in the hands of the Muslims, although the Muslims don't control. But they chose that because of the different denominations of the Christians, and they fight with one another who would have control of it. So since the time of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, they chose, meaning the Christians, to have it with the Muslims so that they would open and close, whatever. I'm not sure exactly with the details. But anyway, this is something that is, we believe that there is truth and falsehood, there is belief and disbelief, and whoever does not embrace the religion of Islam and he dies in that state, he's among the disbelievers that will be in the hellfire. This is a truth that we have to be proud of. This is our religion of Islam. But at the same time, we don't force anybody to embrace the religion of Islam. We explain to them, if they refuse, this is their choice, but we warn them from the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't do things that is haram in our religion that would show that we're accepting others' faith by, for example, saying that whoever believes in anything, he's okay, he will enter Jannah. Of course, this is not permissible whatsoever, but this is a way to protect their lives if they choose to be that way, and that's the justice and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without undermining anything of the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, I hope that there's some issues that need to be clarified with al-wala wal-bara and so on. Can we eat food made of chicken and beef sent by a Christian neighbor? Wallahi, this issue, it is such a complicated one, and it wasn't a very complicated issue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and this is the original ruling, He said that وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ وَطَعَامُ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ حِلٌّ لَكُمْ وَطَعَامُكُمْ حِلٌّ لَهُمْ. That meaning, the food of the people of the book is halal for you, and your food is halal for them. And the food here meant is the meat. And the people of the book are the Jews and the Christians. You can eat their meat. You can eat the beef, chicken, of course not pork, it's haram for us to eat. But this verse, there's another verses in the Quran that talks about it's not permissible for us to eat anything that is not being slaughtered, whether it's cow or whatever. It has to be slaughtered, as we know properly. The name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be uttered. Person has to say Bismillah. So if these two things are not done, and we are certain that it didn't happen, then it's not permissible for us to eat that meat, even if it's from a Muslim. Because it has to be slaughtered, it has to say Bismillah. For anybody to take the life of even an animal, as we talked about the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has the permission from Allah. And that's why we say Bismillah, by the name of Allah. We don't just take the lives of the animals like this because we're another form of animals that want to eat. No, we're human beings. And we take their lives by the name of Allah. And this is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to do it in the same way, slaughtering and so on. If they don't, then we can't eat. So with the issue is whether they slaughter or not, and saying Bismillah and so on. So it's all matters of doubtful matters. So a person to avoid all of that is to make sure that we eat what is slaughtered and the name of Allah is uttered. So in that case, if you give it to someone, that's better for you than eating it, because usually here the food is not slaughtered for the most part, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Somebody might disagree with me. Can girls wear jeans? Can men wear jeans? No, it's going to get really... No, of course, if the question means wearing pants in front of men that are not mahram, then that's not permissible because it shapes the body. And the conditions for hijab is not covering the head or covering certain parts of the body. Hijab is a state. And to explain it how it is, when the Muslim woman is in her home, she is in the state of hijab. She's wearing the normal clothing that a woman would wear at home, right? She's not covering her head. Sometimes when they see the cartoons of the children and the woman is at home and she wears the hijab, right? People think she's at home cooking and everything and she's wearing the full hijab and everything. But of course they should not do otherwise, but when she's at home, actually people think that the Muslim woman, she's wearing the full hijab when she's at home. And they say, how can she live her life like this, right? So when she's at home wearing the normal clothing that a woman would wear at home, she is in the state of hijab. Why? Because stranger men are not seeing her, right? So in that case, for that woman that observes the hijab, she's getting a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while she's at home, although she's not wearing the hijab, because she is in the state of hijab, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ. That means stay at your homes. And if she goes out of the home, which is permissible for the woman to go out of her home, she's still in that state of hijab, so that's why she would wear the hijab. So that when she goes out of the home, still the men would not be able to see her. So she would get rewards whether she's at home or outside the home because she's observing hijab. So the hijab is a state. And the conditions for the hijab that it covers, whether it's covered from the head to toe or showing the face, in which it has differences of opinion, but to be for the honesty, that the ulama, those who said for the women to show their face, they said that if the people, the sinners become so much in a town, then she should cover her face. Why? Because they look at her and things like that, and if she's, for example, her face is beautiful and everything, that means can, be sinful and so on. So anyway, so if we say from head to toe, for example, and it's not shaping the body, and it's not transparent, and it's not adornment in itself, does not attract the eyes of people, and it's not something specific for the disbelieving women, then this is what the conditions of hijab are. So it depends, of course, it shapes the body, so it's not permissible to be done in front of people. When it is not in front of the strange men, still the woman should observe some form of modesty in clothing, and the tight clothing even in front of women towards one another. It's one of the things of Chinese to wear the normal clothing, but not to be too extreme in these things. But but in general, pants in general, if it's okay, if it's in front of women, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Is it mandatory to follow the 4 schools of thoughts? It's another lecture. But what is mandatory is that, as we heard, we follow the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the ulama and the 4 ai this is their job, was to call the people to follow the Prophet ﷺ. They did not call people to make them barriers between them and the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Abi Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, all of them and all the ai, their goal was for the people to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And they all agreed that if the hadith is authentic, put my opinion or throw my opinion against the wall, because this is the religion of Allah. But at the same time, we are supposed to respect our ulama. So this attitude has to be in us, that our goal is to follow the Prophet ﷺ. If we don't have the knowledge, and we're supposed to do something now, we ask the people of knowledge. Whatever we ask them and tell us to do this, we do this. In our hearts, we believe that this is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So the alim that would teach us the deen, whether he is following the principles of Imam Hanifa or Imam Shafi'i or others, there is no harm in this, but as long as when we ask him, we know that to the best of the capability of this alim, because he's a alim, to the best of his knowledge, that this is what he believes is the truth according to the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Whether it's from this madhab or that madhab. The issue of can we take this opinion from that one madhab and that other opinion and the other madhab, we're not going to pick and choose based on our desire, but based on the alim present in your masjid, and you ask him. Whether he is this madhab or that madhab, you ask him, because he's not someone that is strictly following a madhab, he's following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ with the principles of that madhab. Nothing wrong with that. If you ask him and you tell him, and he tell you to do this in your salah, do it. And there's no such a thing in the deen of Islam that a normal person doesn't have knowledge, he would say, I am Shafi'i. Where is that in the deen of Islam? It's the alim, he can say that. Why? Because the alim has to study fiqh. And when the alim studies fiqh, he has to study it, he study a book with the alim. So he has to study certain principles in fiqh. So these principles, either he studied the principles of Imam Shafi'i, Imam Hanifa, and so on, and they all agreed on the first 3 principles, which is Quran, Sunnah, consensus that we talked about. Right? But for a normal person, how would he know which madhab to choose? There's no madhab for the layman. His madhab is the madhab of his ulama. And this is what the ulama, they say. You ask the alim, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالزُّبُرِ, with the evidences, they tell you the thing, then you do, and it doesn't matter if this alim is one madhab or the other, as long as this alim is not someone that is blindly following one madhab only. The alim is someone that is following the principles of the madhab, but once the opinion is clear to him that the correct way is the other way, then he follows it. These are the ones to be asked. But again, this is very brief, and I hope it's not misunderstood, and it has to have some more details to it. What if you are trying to implement an Islamic environment in our home? However, the elders in our home are not in agreement. How can we resolve it? Wallahi, this is also how to deal with the parents and everything. This is part of the ubudiyya and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as a rule, there is no obedience to anyone if they order us to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it's a small sin, even if it's our own parents. but at the same time, we have to be very kind to them. And this is, to some, they might feel that it's a dilemma, but this is how we're supposed to be servants of Allah. We obey the parents and we're kind to them because this is the order of Allah. And we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because this is the order of Allah. Whenever there is a conflict, who do we put forward? The obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that mean for us to be mean to our parents? No, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still ordered us to be kind. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, a man came to him and he told him, my mother is ordering me to divorce my wife. What do I do? And we know the obedience of the mother. So he told him, do not divorce your wife and do not make your mother upset with you. How can that happen? It's impossible, right? But that means what? It means don't divorce your wife because it's not a religious. She's not asking for him to divorce her because her religion is bad. It's just a matter of it's not appropriate. So don't divorce your wife. But at the same time, your mother, of course, will be upset. Do not make her upset. That means what? That you have to be extremely kind to her. And if she's upset with you, you're still extremely kind to her. And having so much goodness towards her and everything, so that eventually she will be happy with you. And this is the orders of Allah, so we have to implement it in the most perfect way. So to be patient and to be kind, never to raise the voice, and never shaitan come and whispers, they are sinners. You are being righteous and they are telling you to do this. They are bad. There is no such a thing. A person should be still kind to them and advise them if the time permits to advise them. Even the ulama, they say, this is an important thing. If the parent is doing something bad, a parent is doing a sin, and you see that your parents are doing something that is sinful, what is the job of the son or the daughter? They should wait, of course, for the right moment, and they have the care into their hearts how to advise them, and they advise them in the most decent and kind way. Once the matter is clear to them, do not keep on advising them. They already know. Why? So that you don't make them angry with you. You do not participate in the sin that they are committing. You do not go by them the sinful thing that they want to do, for example, even if they get angry with you. You do not do that because it's your religion you have to protect, and at the same time to be kind to them and not to mix these two together. Interfaith meetings where there is common prayers, etc. This is also one of the things that is the issue of how to deal with the people that we live with in the same society. This is another important issue that needs to be discussed, and maybe that can be dealt with in another session. But very briefly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna ad-deena 'inda Allah al-Islam, that the religion that is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the religion of al-Islam. And as a result of that, the issue of the relationship between Muslims and others has to be from that stand, without causing any harm, of course. Our goal is to call others to the deen of al-Islam and to explain to them how the religion of al-Islam is, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them guidance to the truth. And we do not compromise anything of our religion as a result of that. When we look at Islam and disbelief, we cannot accept the fact that somebody might curse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our masajid. And if somebody claimed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a human being, that it's a curse to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should never ever have this in our place of worship. This is their belief. We do not cause any harm to them if they believe this way, but we do not bring and take the means of to have the words of kufr being uttered in the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this is the worst, one of the worst crimes to be committed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing is the like of Him. And He has no son, He has no daughter, He is not begotten. He is the all-hearer, the all-seer, and nothing is the like of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. If somebody brings someone to the masjid and he curses his own father, he won't like him. He won't let him do that whatsoever. So the same thing. But we have good relations, yes. If we get together in a closed doors to discuss how we can clean the city, no, there's nothing wrong with that. Right? But when it comes to matters of the deen, the matter has to be very clear. And we do not compromise any of our religion. Somebody would say, you don't compromise anything if somebody says what they believe. Of course, but once we have it in the same gathering, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran clearly. We go by the Quran and the Sunnah. Even if it's not something that maybe a person would think it's not our benefit. He said, وَقَدْ نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ أَنْ إِذَا سَمِعْتُمْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ يُكْفَرُ بِهَا وَيُسْتَهْزَأُ بِهَا فَلَا تَقْعُدُوا مَعَهُمْ حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِهِ إِنَّكُمْ إِذًا مِثْلُهُمْ. that He had revealed to you in His book, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that if you hear the verses of Allah being mocked at, or if you hear the words of disbelief, do not sit with them till they indulge in something else, otherwise you are one of them. Our deen makes us in such a way that we don't have any form of hypocrisy. If we are in a place, in a gathering, where the words of kufr are being pronounced, it is our duty either to stand and to explain in the most kind way that this is not right, because Allah is the most perfect subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or, if we can't do that, you're afraid for your life to be threatened, you have to leave right away. Because you cannot stand the fact that there is the words of disbelief is being said and you're present in the same place. So we have to make sure that we do all of these things in that perspective. But again, it doesn't mean that we're mean or harm or whatever there is, no. And again, people can speak to one another in a kind way and everything like that, but when it comes to beliefs and deen and everything, we have to make sure that we don't compromise our religion. I'm sorry that I'm taking too much time. This is the last two. Okay, inshallah. Well, mashallah, the questions are very good questions. And maybe if these questions are saved, you can even have, speakers to come and each one is a lecture by itself, mashallah. The role of the husband and the wife in strengthening their iman. This is such a beautiful thing that I didn't mention. And these are one of the strong means to protect our religion, because we need companionship in protecting our religion, and the strongest one is the relationship between the husband and the wife. The Prophet ﷺ said that half of the religion is to get married. So fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the other half, meaning your religion becomes easy. If you got married, a big portion of your struggle is taken care of, and you have somebody supposed to be, if she's righteous and you righteous, helping one another to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the matter is supposed to be easier for you to protect your religion. That's why the Prophet ﷺ ordered the young people to get married. And if they're not able to get married, then they should observe fasting in a constant manner to protect themselves. So it's the religion of Islam to make it easy for people to get married. For what reason? To enjoy their life? No. It's to protect their religion. And their enjoyment will be, which is something good, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to protect the deen of Allah. And it's definitely a very important one. And for the husband and the wife, they need to help one another, to remind one another with the deen of Allah, to sit with one another, to read matters, to learn Quran, and to help one another to learn the religion of Islam. And to make at times of dispute, they refer always to the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why the ulama, they are different on one opinion when our religion is one and our Quran is one and our Prophet is one. This is the qadr and the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah created the human being in such a way. وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبُّكَ وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ. That Allah created them different. And except those who Allah have mercy on, they won't be different among themselves. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضَكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً أَتَصْبِرُونَ. We made you fitna towards one another. Then you need to be patient with this, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered. The differences, some differences is not valid whatsoever, and some differences is valid in the sense that people strive to find the truth. The principles of our religion, there is no room for differences. In our belief, in our principles of our religion, there is no differences of opinions, and whoever bring any differences of opinion regarding to these things is not accepted. He's a deviant, right? And we don't listen to him, and he's not one of the people of knowledge. But when it comes to how to make salah, matters of fiqh, things like that, the ulama had differences of opinions, yes. And this is actually from the beauty of the religion of Islam. So people are getting rewards by striving more and more to find the truth in every small and little issues. They all pray in the same time, the same row and everything like that. But if they put the hands different, things of that nature, this is the room for exalting and doing the effort to find the most perfect way. And those who would find the truth in that specific small matter, they would get double of the rewards. And those who would have the weak opinion or the wrong ones regarding to this small thing, their salah is still valid, they get even a reward for their striving to find the truth. So in this matter, it's actually one of the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ummah. But those who would get angry with each other, this is because of the lack of knowledge. This is because of the envy that they would have, which is another diseases in the hearts. And if this envy is there, everybody wants to be on top of one another, then this is because the diseases that is present in the heart. But again, if everybody refers their affairs to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, according to the understanding of the early generations of Islam, the differences will be a spacious room for everybody. And this ulama of this ummah, they lived happily like this, and they praised one another. The four Imams praised one another, although they had differences of opinions. And it was never an issue of an enmity among them. But the problem is with the lack of knowledge and other ways of deviation. And this is also another important topic that we would see the beauty of it by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we would learn it, inshallah.